Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to take you on a presentation that I built a couple years ago. I've sort of culled it down a bit to give you the real top level view on what is it if you as a business or a business owner want to do a data strategy, what are the things you need to consider? And specifically when you're wanting to move your data and your systems into the cloud. So I'm going to share my screen with a presentation that I did. And let's go through it. So what is it you need to think about when you're going into a data strategy? And it is, right from the get-go, it is not just about the technology. There's a lot of other things to consider. So the typical challenges that we see, that I've seen in my years of helping some of the bigger FTSE 100 companies and government agencies across the UK, who some of them are global businesses, has been there is a hugely disjointed data experience across the business and all the different teams that a business may have, like finance, HR, operations and sales. And a lot of it tends to be an isolated focus in terms of thinking. And so when you're looking to do a data strategy, specifically when you want to move to the cloud, there's a number of things you want to be thinking about. And what I often start with is what are the pain points? And there's 4 key pain points that I see as common across any industry, which is the first being obviously the decisions that are being made on how to improve the business tend to only look at the technical deployment rather than what the business value is that you're trying to achieve. Because it's very easy to go out to a shop and buy what the salesperson said is the best software to go and buy, but if it doesn't actually fit what you need and you as a culture of a business are needing, then you've just spent a lot of money for a very expensive toy. And the analogy I give on that is, when someone passes their driving test, you don't go out and buy a Ferrari because you want the best car that money can buy. You generally start with something very, very economical and cheap to run and generally very safe, because there's inevitably they're going to crash or it's going to be thrown out. And it's the same when you go into deploying tech in a business. Where are you in your maturity level and what actually fits your basis of what you need right now, not necessarily what is the best thing you could potentially buy. This then leads to the next item, which is understanding what your legacy business processes are and how the fact that data is hidden among all of these processes. And if you think back to some of the other talks I've done where I've talked about the World Economic Forum and what they've seen in terms of the next 5 years of business, automation of processes is absolutely fundamental. And so when you're looking at doing a data strategy, the processes that are currently existing in your business need to be reviewed as well, because the systems that are currently in place, the data that is generated from them and is then moved through all these processes needs to be mapped and monitored so you actually understand what is truly happening, so that when you deploy new technology, you actually have made sure that those processes are either still continuing, have been automated, or have been changed or maybe redundant. The next one obviously is a follow-on from the second one, which is this concept of data islands. Now, because of legacy business systems and processes and this disjunct view of how businesses operate, you've got this problem of isolated pockets of data systems operating throughout your entire business, which are data islands. And of course that makes it very difficult to find them and to communicate with them. And all these 3 things lead to the fourth item being, if you don't improve these areas, you are without a doubt going to fall behind on your competition. And so if you have, for instance, data in your finance system where you're getting revenue leakage or cost leakages that you can't see easily, you're potentially minimizing your profitability that you could make. And it's the same where, if for instance, if you're losing customers in a certain area but you can't actually find it and you can't find the reasons why, you're inevitably going to keep losing those customers, which will of course lose you your revenue and your profits. So how do we prioritize this? The 4 key areas that I look at is very much how do we maximize your returns on reducing the cost and risk of overcoming these challenges we just talked about. And very much that comes back to that cultural piece. What are your systems, who are your people, and what is it you're trying to achieve, and what's the time frame of trying to do this, and how do we make sure that it does work properly? Second here is data historically has always been treated as a cost center, where it needs to be treated now as an asset, and how its direct correlation to profitability improvements and that reduction of cost and risk is absolutely fundamental in changing that perception of data. Data is no longer a cost, and if you treat it as a cost, it's actually going to be very detrimental to the way you operate your business. Thirdly, again, this should come at no surprise, as I've already mentioned it a few times, you have to enable the cultural change required to move from that data consumption to an analytics-driven culture. If you're wanting to move your data strategy into where we use live feeds of data, we have live streaming of analytics, we have a single source of the truth of what our data is, you have to enable the cultural change to allow that to happen. It doesn't just happen magically. The fourth one that often gets overlooked is how do you leverage your existing ecosystem to make sure that the investments you've put into, say, your on-prem infrastructure are utilized to their maximum, so that you're not doubling up costs, you're not potentially missing out on, say, depreciation in terms of an accounting asset by just getting rid of things. It's how do you find that nice balance between the two. So when I look at a platform, I mean, I'm a Microsoft junkie. I've used Microsoft for over 15 years. To me, the key benefit with the Microsoft platform is it is a single platform that interlinks things like cloud infrastructure, data, security, analytics, and AI. That is all encompassed in the one platform, but it also incorporates things like Dynamics, where you can see your single customer views, your sales, your ERP and operations, your opportunities that are coming in, and your case management of things where things might be going wrong. You mix that in with their Power Platform that allows you to create custom apps with low code, no code, to automate processes through Power Automate, and then to be able to see your data analytics through things like Power BI. You then link that in with Office 365, which gives you access obviously to things like Teams and Documents and Word and Excel, but it also gives you access to storage and to Active Directory and for security in terms of people. You then mix that in with LinkedIn, and that gives you the access to talent, histories of jobs, relationships, and skills of people either in your business or who you might want to hire. You then mix that in with just some of the trends that are happening in the market, and you start to get this whole interconnected ecosystem of what the Microsoft platform actually brings to you. And when you start to look at them individually, the Gartner, the Quadrant, Microsoft items, whether it's analytics or meeting collaboration or productivity, have been sitting in the leader quadrant in the top right corner for the last 4 or 5 years. So even as, if we think back to what I was saying, is it's not about buying the best technology, but when you look at Microsoft, that's one of the reasons why I've stuck with them, is because all of their areas do sit within the best quadrant in terms of the leader quadrant, and have done for numerous years, and usually continuation of years. So when you're looking at a platform in the cloud, to me, this old mentality of finding the best of breed of different items and then smashing them together with a hammer, this is what Microsoft has very much tried to change by going, we'll bring all the individual items. So if you just want CRM, it's there. But actually, by building in your CRM system with everything else, you get a properly interconnected ecosystem. You stop this problem of having data islands all over your business. So how do you get started? And to me, if you think about it, when you're building a house, you don't start by picking out the curtains. You don't start picking out the wall color, and you don't build the roof before you've built a solid foundation. And it's the same when you look at what a modern data framework, a modern platform, a modern data strategy looks at. You have to start with the foundations. Build on a proven platform. Understand what your strategy needs to be, and focus it on that business value through the most pressing use cases. Once you've done that, then you can start to grow and mature your platform and your culture as you start to build upon what it is you need and how your business might be changing. So what does a foundation review look like? To me, there's 4 key areas that you need to look at in that current ecosystem review. The first being, obviously, what is your architecture ecosystem? And that means, what have you got on-prem? What cloud have you tried to use? What's your strategy in terms of a hybrid model in terms of cloud and on-prem? What systems are you using? So what's your ERP system, your CRM or operating system? What sales systems do you use? How many are out of service? How many are out of date? How many cost you, what does it cost you in licensing? The next stage then, of course, is what's your reporting landscape? If you've got all these systems and all this data stored, how do you then utilize that data? Do you have multiple BI tools? Are you predominantly using Excel? And if you're using macros within Excel, they're going to be reaching end of life soon where they're not in support. And so if you're using macros that were written 15 years ago by people who no longer exist in the business, and the support from Microsoft is going to be going away, you've got a huge risk there in the sense that some of the fundamentals of how your business runs are locked away in things that no one knows how to use. And of course that then leads to that issue of multiple islands of data repositories. The next key piece then, of course, is defining what are your use cases. So now that you've defined what you actually have, it's now looking at what is it you would like to be doing. So what are the things you would like to see? What are the pain points you'd like to go away? Or what are the opportunities that, you know, if you sort of think about the magic wand, if I could just do this, then I could do these options much easier. How do you interlink those with that wider business strategy? And then of course back again to the cultural side. How culturally adept is our business at being able to handle these changes, to be open to trying new things with new technology, with new data and new ways of consuming and storing data. All of these four things really lead to the end goal of how do I start to envision this strategy, build this strategy, build a proof of value, you know, build a platform in its most basic form, start to see some of that value coming out, start looking at a target operating model and start deploying what that might look like. And then of course building up a roadmap on how do I go from this envisioning phase of proof of values and testing things and mapping out my current ecosystem to then getting to a minimal viable product to eventually getting into a full-blown production system. So I hope those were useful. I said when I was a consultant for some companies, and like I said, I worked for some of the big FTSE 100 companies in the UK. I also did some government work when I was in Australia. The concepts were the same no matter which industry I was in. You must know where you've been, where you are now, in order to know where you can go to in the future. And you have to be able to take that honest look, you know, remove the veil of bias, and really delve deep into how is it we operate now, what's good, what's bad, and what is mediocre. What systems do we have now? How good are they? And what is it we're trying to achieve in the future? So if we think in 5 years' time, what is it I want to be in 5 years' time? How do I want to get there? And then start your data strategy based on what this technology can do for you, what the business itself is trying to achieve, and what your people will be capable of, and what skill sets you might need to rehire in or start training in. Anyway, I hope you found that useful. As I said, I'm more than happy to talk about this in more detail. It's something, I said, I'm a strong believer in you need to start at the beginning to know where you're going, and it's the same with data strategies and it's the same with tech deployment. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Catch you on the next one.